Yes, sir. And just like that, we're back with another episode of What Life Can Be with SR.Gent. And today we got the Pope and Hitler. Yeah, that's exactly what we got. The Pope and Hitler talking to each other for what? Let's get into it.
A series of recently opened Vatican archives are shedding new light on the relationship between Pope Pius XII and Adolf Hitler as he led Nazi Germany during World War II. Amna Nawaz looks at what we are learning and how it changes our thinking about the Vatican during that time.
Judy, in 2020, the Vatican released millions of documents on Pope Pius XII that were previously hidden from public view. These include transcripts of negotiations between the Pope and Nazis. A new book published today takes a deeper look at these revelations. Historian David Kurtzer is the author of that book. It's called The Pope at War: The Secret History of Pius XII, Mussolini, and Hitler. And he joins me now. David Kurtzer, welcome to the NewsHour. Thank you for being here. So a lot of folks know previous versions of history around Pius XII went one of two ways, right? He was either called Hitler's Pope and an anti-Semite, or the story was that he did everything in his power to save as many Jewish people as he could during the war. After reviewing the documents, what's your understanding?
Well, I think neither one is really accurate. They're both extremes. The fact is, Pius XII was afraid, certainly in the first years of the war, that the Nazis were going to win. And so he felt he had to plan for a Europe that was going to be under Nazi control with their pal Mussolini helping out. So his main concern in those earlier years, say 39 to 42, was to protect the church in a time when Europe could be under Nazi control. It wasn't that he loved the Nazis, much less Hitler, but this was his thinking.
What does that mean when you say protect the church? For example, we mentioned these meetings that we now know happened between the Pope and a personal envoy of Hitler. What did we learn about those? What were those talks like?
Well, probably the most shocking finding from these newly opened Vatican archives that just opened 2 years ago after 50 years of pressure and interest in being able to see what they contain is that within weeks of Pius XII being elected Pope, he's elected in early 1939, Hitler saw an opportunity and decided to send a personal envoy, who himself is a rather colorful character, the great-grandson of Queen Victoria of England, a Nazi prince who is married to the daughter of the King of Italy. And he would begin to shuttle back and forth between Hitler and the Pope over the next 2 years, engaged in secret negotiations.
Okay, so definitely was some communication going on, but from his perspective, he's saying that maybe the Pope thought the Nazis could win. He's trying to position the church and his people accordingly to where that they still have a way of life, and you know what I mean, just basically they're brought into the new control without being harmed. And I can understand that from a leader perspective. You want to make sure people are good. But hey, we never know what's going on. This is just the perspective of this person from him reading the transcripts. Hopefully, we could all see the transcripts and we can get our own perspective. Until then, let's keep it going. See what else we get from this.
We didn't know about these until just now.
David, when it comes down to what Pope Pius XII did or didn't do in terms of saving Jewish lives, you tell the story about one October night in 1943 in Rome. What happened then?
Well, October 16th, 1943, the SS had lists of all the Jews in Rome and went door to door and tried to arrest all of Rome's Jews, thousands of them. They found about 1,260, arrested them, brought them to a military college just outside the walls of the Vatican, and held them there for 2 days. What we now learn from these recently opened archives is that the Vatican worked very hard to show that some of them had been baptized and therefore shouldn't be considered Jews from the point of view of the church, and therefore should not be shipped off to Auschwitz with the rest of them. And in fact, about 250 of those who were originally rounded up were freed before 2 days later they were put on a train, 1,007 of them, of whom I think about 16 would survive, and most, in fact, a week later on arrival at Auschwitz were immediately put to death. The Pope did send his Cardinal Secretary of State to meet with the German ambassador to the Holy See to say, do you really need to go through with this? Can't you do something about this? But the ambassador told the Cardinal Secretary of State, this has been ordered by the highest level, namely Hitler, and you really don't want me to protest on your behalf, do you? And the Cardinal Secretary of State basically said, no, I'm not insisting on any protest.
Man, so this was a very trying time in history, man. It was, whew, I couldn't imagine being in this position when it feels like the walls are closing in. You're at war, people trying to take over your country, and you don't know if you're going to win or lose. And you're dealing with a character like Hitler. So the person he was talking to was like, look, I have to carry out these orders. And even though it's a mass execution, this is what I'm ordered to do. And if I go back and tell him anything of why I'm not doing that, I'm going to have to tie your name to it. So, hey, he's like, no, I don't want to send any protests. I don't have any problem carry out the orders. So, yeah, that can be taken as if he was supporting Hitler, but he was just basically not willing to die for the cause and to stand against Hitler. Let's keep it going, see what else we can get.
David, I'm curious. I know previously the Vatican has come forward when previous allegations were made similar to this about Pope Pius XII. Have they responded in any way to your book or to the reporting that's in this book?
Well, unfortunately, I mean, other national Roman Catholic churches, for example, in France and in Germany, have come to terms with this history. And part of the history is how it was that in the middle of the 20th century, the millions of Jews could be massacred, little children, old people, by people who thought of themselves as Christian, more or less half of them Roman Catholics, but also Protestants, of course. And in other countries, in Germany, in France, the clergy has come to terms or begun to come to terms with it, but the Vatican has not. The Vatican released a statement in, I think, 1998, we remember, in which they said their own demonization of the Jews had absolutely nothing to do with the Holocaust. So this is, I think my book is probably not entirely appreciated by many in the Vatican, although there are those in the Vatican when I work in the archives who kind of whispered to me they're happy that this is finally coming out.
Man, so it's always split communities, man. Of course, there's people in the Vatican that don't want this information out there because it makes them look like the church was not standing with the Jewish people. And yeah, unfortunately, hey, the facts are never pretty, but they are the facts. It is the truth. So it's important that we get those out and that we process and accept those so we can move forward in a world that's not full of lies and narratives that were meant to control us. Hey, let's keep it going. Let's play it out.
What about how we view, all these years later, the role of Pope Pius XII as his leadership of the church? I mean, especially with there's being a push for his sainthood, right? How should we look at that when you step back?
Yes, well, the popes have tried to beatify and canonize, make Pius XII a saint. He's a hero of the right wing or the conservatives in the church, who see the church as having gone wrong after his death with the Second Vatican Council under his successor, John the 23rd. I wish that, first of all, I wish they'd read this book, but I'd also wish they'd be willing to consider this history anew. But I'm afraid for those really don't have an open mind, and it's unlikely that it will change their mind. So I think the drive to make a saint of Pius XII will continue.
That is historian David Kurtzer, author of the new book, The Pope at War, The Secret History of Pius XII, Mussolini, and Hitler. David Kurtzer, thank you so much.
Woo, crazy. A lot to unpack, man, but it's a lot of secrets with the church. That I know for sure. Let me know how I feel about that in the comments, man. What do you guys think, man? This relationship between the Pope and Hitler and his stance on protecting the church and the people versus just not standing against Hitler for his own safety. Hey, who knows? But just like that, we're gone, man. Let me get that like, comment, subscribe, and I catch you on the next one. For real.
Not for nothing, I cut my heart out, left it on the right mind. I came up, I've been using my mind.